right, okay, let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back. It's the first episode of Offset for this week, the time when I get to take over Adobe Live's live streams and bring on really cool people and interview them about their process and their inspiration, some of their work, and any questions that you may have along the way. This is a live stream, so if you're here live, thank you for being here, like Barbara, Oliver, Annika, Clever, and the like. It's always good to see you guys. Also, hello, people over on YouTube. Chop, chop, good to see you. And my name is Ryan Selvey. I'm a motion designer. I like to also do illustration and graphic design. And I have the privilege of being able to hop on here and pick some people that I think are very cool to share. Today, we're going to be interviewing Alabaster Pizzo, which I am really excited to show you her work. She is a sequential artist. She has been making work consistently for the last decade or so. And you can check out her work also at alabasterpizzo.com. Just to give you a little bit heads up, she's based from New York. She went to School of Visual Arts. Now she is in LA. She has done background work for Tuca and Birdie. She has been awarded one of the best American comics in 2015. She's a member of the Animation Guild. And I'm really excited to have you guys come on and see a bunch of her work. So without further ado, I'm going to actually stop butchering her intro and let her do her own intro for you guys. But please give a warm welcome to Alabaster. Hi, Alabaster.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the stream. Really nice to, get to meet you, because it's always really cool whenever I see someone's work online, then kind of getting to meet the face behind it all. But also just excited to share your work with others, which we will see how that goes. Do you want to just give a quick rundown of your kind of like elevator pitch as an artist?
I call myself a cartoonist primarily. Sequential artist, yeah, I guess that's another ways to say that. I have a few other side projects and kind of a rotating cast of day jobs, but my main practice is comics.
Very cool. And what got you into art to begin with?
I've just done it my whole life. My parents are artists, and
I've
been making comics since I was like 3.
Now, is there a specific comic or cartoon that you kind of can point back to and say, like, that really gained my interest when I was younger, and you feel like it has inspired you through to now? Or do you kind of just absorb everything as you go?
Yeah, kind of the latter. I wasn't like super into comics specifically as a kid, but it always just seemed like the easiest way to tell a story to me, like writing and drawing at the same time.
Now, are you also like a avid journalist? Do you feel like you write a lot, like journalist in the sense of like journaling, not like reporting news? Do you feel like you also feel the need to kind of write stories out, or do you mostly feel like you kind of get that through your system all through drawing?
Both. I feel like half a writer and half an artist.
That makes sense.
Which, like, that's kind of where comics lives. It's interesting. Comics are kind of in this middle spot between literature and art, and they're sort of like not really in either.
Yeah, they're kind of in this ether kind of
And they tend to be like looked down a little bit, I think, by like both of those realms. So I think that's interesting, and I like existing in that space, but it can be frustrating sometimes. But
no, it's hard to navigate. Even in just having my own interest in any sort of comics or sequential art, I always remember having that kind of conflict of people looking down on their nose of, it's a picture book. It's I'm like, no, there's so much more to it. And obviously, I love to see art, so it's always nice to have that kind of have its own avenue and its own spotlight. Reverb Mike says, "Don't fence me in." With that in mind, I would love to go ahead and show people your work, which is our first segment. So let's hop on into let's look at your work. Let's look at your work. So you were gracious enough to send over a hand selection of the work that you are proud of and you feel properly represents your style and what you do. This was the first one that you had sent over, which is this adorable anthropomorphic style of these animals kind of in a crowd. This is watercolor in actual physical form, right?
Yes, most of my finished work is traditional media, although I do use kind of a combination of digital and traditional to like get to that point.
Okay.
And yeah, most of my work is anthropomorphic.
Yeah, because I saw you also worked on background work for Tuca and Birdie, which also, for those who aren't familiar with that show, are probably also familiar with BoJack Horseman, which has a few crossover of some other artists, which has a really great anthropomorphic style. I myself am a big fan of Animal Crossing, so obviously that's also anthropomorphic, but a little bit of a different style. So I always am drawn towards adorable animals in human form. What kind of paper do you use predominantly when you go? Do you have a brand or anything that you kind of lean towards?
I've tried to start using watercolor paper specifically. If I'm doing watercolors, I usually will get, well, I don't know. Sometimes it's like whatever pads I have around. People will like give me things sometimes, and I just have like a random assortment of paper. But I'll also like buy a sheet of Reeves BFK or something or Arches and cut it down. I try to use like archival material and not, pay attention to decent quality
Yeah.
stuff you can, especially because something like this is a commission.
Oh, really? Okay.
Somebody sent me, this is a photo someone sent me that was taken, I think, at a wedding.
Oh, cute.
I draw a version of it and I mail them the art so they could, frame it and have it forever. So
Oh, it's fantastic. So how big is this piece?
it's 5x7.
5 by 7. Okay, cool. So is that like generically you kind of stick within maybe the field of a comic book kind of size? Do you ever work in a large scale medium, or is it mostly like a handheld?
I've stayed very small for a long time. I'm just now trying to work on larger works. I haven't quite cracked the code to translate my work to bigger, but I am trying to do large scale paintings in the same kind of style and the same like sort of theme, but bigger.
Now, would that also be watercolor, or would you kind of
I want
migrate to maybe like acrylic or something?
Yeah, I'm trying to find like an opaque paint that works for me. I've been trying acrylics, acrylic wash, a couple other things. That's a work in progress right now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next one we have. Let me see if it jumps over for me. It's not going to though. So give me 1 second to pull it up. I'll do this one. We have these cool cats. They're not actually cats; they're dogs. But these cool cats that are hanging out. Looks kind of like the. Oh my god, I can't think of their name.
The Ramones.
The Ramones. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be trolled for forgetting that. But you got the Ramones. Do you want to talk a little bit about this piece?
This was another commission. But someone asked me, usually people send me photos of like themselves and their spouses or their kids or whatever, but someone asked if they could have me draw the Ramones as dogs.
Okay.
So that was really fun. I love working from photos. That's like kind of my thing right now. So
yeah, how do you manage to like forgive me for not being able to say the Ramones. I mean, Mike is in the chat already being able to call it out. But how do you feel like you can bring through likeness in a non-human form?
How do I do it? Well, I like to work very simply, so it's I guess kind of like a caricature almost. It was something I started doing myself because I do a lot of like autobio work, and it was like kind of a clever way to like disguise people's like real identity if I was talking about real people. But I wound up like it looks just like the person anyway. So I thought I would put that to better use and do likenesses of people as these animals.
No, I think that that's kind of an Achilles heel almost to the fact that you were disguising them as something else, and then it turned out to be just as identifiable that it's them. That's cute. It's fun. And also, I find it interesting that it is just so identifiable. So you mentioned it's similar to caricatures. I know a lot of people, they tend to squint, or they will draw someone a few times before they then kind of try to dumb it down. For something like this, did you just hop straight into it, or did you have to study the Ramones to any certain extent before you could anthropomorphize them?
I try to do like a knee-jerk reaction sometimes to people, just like see what kind of animal face jumps out at me. I do a sketch first. This is just pencil, but
Mhm.
it's like I do a sketch and then I trace it in pencil. So it looks a little off the cuff, but I did some working out beforehand.
And then, like you said, everything is physical, so then everything just goes in kind of as a scan in to then present it digitally. So,
Yeah, I do most of my sketches in Photoshop.
oh, do you really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's just so much easier to like erase and resize things and move things around and not have
It,
to.
and
Yeah.
then, okay, so you have that sketch or whatever. Then, do you begin on a fully blank canvas and just draw from scratch, or do you find a way to kind of transfer that sketch over to a physical medium to then be able to reference?
I print it.
Oh, you print it. Oh, okay, cool.
And then I trace it on a light box. Yeah, that's my.
Oh, old school light box. Very cool. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I've used light boxes back in college a lot, but now if I were to do it, I would have to like just put up the screen brightness on my tablet and then use that as a light box.
That works.
Yeah,
I have a
but
really old light box that was belonging to my dad in the 80s, and it's like a big metal box with a fluorescent light bulb in it.
really,
And I also have a light pad which I could travel with, but when I'm at home, I always use the box. I don't know. I've been using it since high school, so.
no, I mean, it's also nice that it kind of has that tie to your dad as well. It's in the family business, I guess.
Mhm.
Next up, we have a very colorful piece. It's a bunch of these guys in the woods.
Mhm.
Was this a commission as well?
Yeah.
Cool.
I've been
And
doing a lot of those in the last year, so that's why I toss a lot of these in as like recent work.
now, are you currently available for commissions as well? If anyone's interested in the chat.
Yes, I am.
Oh, very cool. And they can just reach you through, you have your email on your website, which we will also be throwing up on the screen later today. But
Mhm.
when you were approached with this piece, what did they ask for, and how did you land here?
Well, what I ask for from people is a photo with more than one person where you could see everyone's body pretty much. I don't like to do like just because the faces are so simple. So I ask for like groups of friends who are like doing a fun pose and like a fun environment. That's like what I try to get from people. And I get some like really cute ones because of that. And this was one of my favorites, like a bunch of people in the woods and they're making funny faces and they're all wearing their hiking outfits and
I love the vest. The vest in particular is very busy. It's very you would think it would be distracting, especially for its colors, but I honestly didn't even notice it at first. And as I investigated the piece more, I then kind of landed on it, and it's like, oh, that's a nice little reward for looking at the piece closer.
I definitely have
Um,
like a maximal style
yeah,
thing. And also just like my decor is very maximal too.
no, definitely a draw towards it. I also want to talk to you a little bit about the foliage that you have in the background here, where you have a lot of nothing, but also a lot of kind of small, busy lines. Now, with this piece in particular, were there more woods kind of going back, or was it more of like an opening to like a field or something?
I don't quite remember. I think it was probably denser, but I try to, since I don't do a lot of shading and I don't do any hatching, I have to kind of figure out a way to like achieve depth with just one line weight. So I try to bring a lot of more detail to the foreground and simplify the background so you can see the characters
No, it
more
works well,
together.
especially with the idea of, to your point, like keeping that depth of focus going on. In my brain, I automatically thought that, they were just woods as it continues to go back, even though there is less of detail. But it, to your point, brings a lot of the attention forward. Um, Also, with the leaves on the ground as well, you have a good evolution from lots and lots and lots to kind of just smaller illusions to like there are still leaves here, but they're no longer full leaves as you go farther back.
Yeah, I try to draw from life as it looks, but also like put a kind of a graphic style on it. So I'll sometimes make decisions to, change how things are so they're not like making a tangent or being too busy, but I'm trying to stay like as close to the photo as I can. So that's like a fun like middle place to live.
And then one last question about this piece. I know that you talked about sketching in Photoshop, then bringing it over. Was this one where you also began to sketch in Photoshop as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you bring that over, does that mean that you went and you put down color first and on top of the sketch or like the sketch that you have brought out, and then you do line work on top of that?
No, I do the lines first because the watercolor is transparent.
Oh, okay. So
So
it works well with that interaction because it feels very intent with kind of how the colors are constrained. I guess I assumed that you would have to trace it, but you just have a steady hand.
No.
So, props.
Yeah, very, very fine detail oriented.
Next up, we have something a little bit closer to the first work that I saw of yours, which is, to your point, like this this sequential vibe. Do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
This is a comic that I serialized on Instagram a couple of years ago called Prayer to Saint Therese. It's I didn't quite think of it like a way to describe it. It's an autobio comic that happens in the future. So it's like a diary comic that hasn't happened to me yet. And it was all done in pencil. And I posted like every other day on Instagram, 5 to 10 panels. And then after that was done, a publisher in Chicago who does very nice risograph books published it. So
and that one's still for sale, right?
Yes, it is on Perfectly Acceptable's website.
Oh, fantastic. And what was that like working with a publisher, especially with something that felt so personal? As I know you said it is yet to come, but this autobiographical experience, did you feel like you still had the freedom to work and fully have the piece be what you wanted it to be? Or did you kind of have to do this juggle of what they were asking for and what you wanted to make?
I've had the good fortune so far to work with small presses that are happy to take something as is. It was completely finished by the time we were in contact.
No.
And
then you were able to just kind of press print pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to, in the future, work with like more mainstream publishers, but yeah, I'm not sure if they would have edits for me, which is like never how I've worked. So
yeah,
that would be interesting. Yeah. I mean, this was essentially self-published because I was posting it as I was working on it, and it was out in the world by the time it was done.
Right.
So yeah.
And then also like through that process, I know you said you were posting things on to your Instagram as you kind of went along. Was it something that you knew the arc of the entire autobiographical experience, or was it like something you just kind of continued to work on until you hit a point and you're like, okay, that's done? Like,
I wrote a script out and I did a lot of research prior to starting it because it happens in the future. So I wanted to like get some good idea of like what's going to be going on in 20 years.
Yeah.
But then as I was like working on it, I changed things a little bit, or I would get feedback because a lot of people were following along and would leave comments on it. So occasionally a comment would, nudge the direction of the story a little bit. I think it's really fun to work that way. I like to let things kind of unfold organically, sometimes without a script, but there was a script, there was an arc, but I always leave room for things to change or evolve in their own way.
And then I know that this is referencing actual locations here, like it's talking about the decor here is so East Village, but it's not necessarily East Village. Are these places that you have just manifested, or are you referencing like Google Maps as a means of inspiration?
This story takes place in Amsterdam, and every place is a real place. I was walking on Google Street View.
Uh-huh.
I updated some things because, of course, like things will change probably in 20 years. But even the everywhere they go inside exists for real.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I didn't like make up any background. It's another like little trick of mine. Even the 2 apartments that the 2 characters live in, I found 2 listings.
No way.
And just went into them. And then they actually exit on the street that those apartments are on and walk somewhere else to like a restaurant that exists. So
how funny would it be if someone like did not know that and then they went to read your work and they're like, wait, that looks a lot like my apartment. Wait, that looks a lot like my street.
a lot of people were like, how long have you lived in Amsterdam? And I'm like, I don't live there.
Have you ever been to Amsterdam?
I went once for a week.
Okay.
But other than that, it's just people are like, wow, you really captured the feel of the city. And I'm like,
yeah, like as much as it felt to me, I guess.
Yeah.
Then next up we have this piece of this church, Mother Trust Superette Center, next to the Superette Light Church. And what's this one about?
This I wanted to show. This is like a quicker comic that I did. Like just digital.
Okay.
I'll occasionally like do a less finished, sketchier comic, maybe just like train of thought that I want to like post on the internet. And I wanted to show an example of something that I've done like that isn't traditional work. It's because it's much faster to just work digitally instead of my whole process of sketching and then printing and then doing it again, especially because I don't have a printer. So I go to the Staples like a few blocks away from me to print.
Right.
And if they're not open, I can't do that. So if I have an idea late at night, I have to draw it like this.
You're like, here we are, we're digital then. One thing I do like about this one in particular is the first time we've seen a heavy use of texture outside of the traditional means of watercolor that you have. And it's cool to see this noise implemented only in some places, even like the bushes in the far right here, where you have this kind of allusion to foliage, but then it differs from the idea of the foliage up in the tree here. And then I'm somehow still believing that this is, different material than the street than is the, on the side of the building and the roof, which is cool to see.
Yeah. I try to work with like a lot of restraints. So
yeah,
that's an example of that.
It works. Annika says that Staples is her rescue, but then Mike also says Walmart also prints for him. So good to know if you're near a Walmart.
I am not. I also don't drive, so I need to do everything on foot.
Like everything has to be accessibly immediately.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you have this one here, which is similar to what you had just had. And once again, you can see this noise here and here, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Also a big fan of the big googly eyes.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah.
On that, and that's how
Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. There's obviously a lot more to see. We're still here for another hour or so. Next up, though, we do like to take a little peek behind the curtain sometimes and check out what it's like from start to finish. We talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but it'd be great to hop into our next section. What's in your sketchbook?
Ooh, what's in your sketchbook?
So thank you for sending these over as well. These are a little bit rougher and our beginning process of what you get to your final piece. We have this first one up here, which is a sketch outline, kind of half in the making. What's this one about?
I wanted to show this. This is how I do the sketch for those works that I was showing before. So this is the digital sketch. I start with like a very... like the gray there is like I do like a blocking out of everything. And then I go in over that and sketch in the figures. And then that in the black is like typically what I wind up printing and then sketching over. I think the next image is the finished version of this.
Let's see. This guy right here.
So that's the finished traditional work that I do over that digital sketch.
Now, it is interesting because I know that you work predominantly in one weight and kind of seeing also how you work in a heavier weight when you're sketching out and then go back to refine the details. It's also really interesting here to see that you have this bouquet of flowers that actually started off as just a circle, and then you kind of came back to fill in the details, which is nice. More so even here, where then we begin to see kind of, you have the stems, you have the sparkler, and it's cool to kind of see how that goes. Do you kind of just try to do that first initial sketch as fast as possible with an idea of composition, and then you come back to it?
Yeah, the first sketch is just shapes. Nothing is more important than anything else. Everything is just, a circle or lines or a triangle. And then I go in and add the details that are more important, like faces or props like the bouquet.
Yeah. And you went to SVA, so I'm guessing they probably had you do some sort of life drawing, right?
I took a life drawing class where we went places in person. Like we went and sat in Grand Central. And I do remember the teacher telling us, like, look at everything just as shapes and lines that are intersecting, and don't think so much like, oh, that's a person versus that's a, stand with books on it versus, plates of food or something. Like everything is just shapes.
Right.
So,
well, cool. Thank you for sharing that one with us. Just also to speak to this piece as well, I love that you have the sides here with the shutters, and using just the direction of the texture that you're using as a means to also add more information, just because obviously you could have just penciled that in fully as well. But since you have that streak, it's nice that it's thing. Katarina is asking if ink or markers mostly, but you said mostly pencil, right?
Yeah, this is pencil. The final, like this image you're seeing is scanned. So I increased the levels a little bit, so it's a little bit darker, but I mostly work in graphite.
Now, is there a specific brand of pencils that you lean towards, or is it just the closest thing you can grab?
I use a mechanical pencil.
Oh, really?
Yes, size. Well, I'm trying to do just one line weight without variation. So.
Oh, very true.
I think it's like a 0.7, and in the middle hardness like HB.
Oh. So. I see. When I look at these, I wouldn't necessarily think of mechanical. I like I said, I enjoy the use of a single weight, but I would never imagine that they would be like heavy enough to be viable as an illustration. I've never, like, upon drafting, I've outside of that, I've never used a mechanical pencil. So it's interesting. Then we have this guy, which is adorable. A little thing. It reminds me of Clyde with a Chance of Meatballs, where there's like a pancake on somebody's head.
This was a photo that someone sent me of themselves in the 90s, a bunch of kids with plastic bags over their heads, which is just, I don't know, child rearing, I think, has changed a bit in a few years.
Yeah, right.
Let kids put shopping bags on their heads anymore. But yeah, I'm trying to teach myself to paint. So this was an attempt at that. So this is acrylic gouache on wood with China marker.
Okay.
So.
And how big is this?
That is about, I have it hanging up. It's like 10 inches by 2 feet.
Okay. So I feel like that's one of your bigger works there then that you have is something that's like working smaller versus larger.
Yeah, I'm trying to go bigger, but this was like a good intermediate.
Kendall says peak childhood memories, which is very concerning. That means that maybe she used to put bags on her head.
Everybody lived, as far as I know, in this photo. So
no, it's not in memoriam. Katarina is asking, did you rotate tape with the pencil though? So I guess, are you using it as a means to cut things off, or are you just full on just drawing with your hand?
I just draw with my hand.
Just draw with your hand.
Yeah,
that steady hand.
Yeah, and I'm also it's quite small, like that. The photo of the wedding with the sparklers, it's 4 inches by 4 inches, so it's quite little.
And then as far as this one goes, you said you also worked with markers on this one as well?
Oh, it's China marker, which is like a grease pencil.
Okay. And so is that how you kind of get the texture in the hair here?
Yeah, I'm trying to replicate the pencil line, but I'm not sure if I will use that again because it's very smudgy.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, I don't feel like there's much smudge here. I guess mostly just in your experience, you had it maybe with your hands or something along the lines of like then you went over and fixed it. But as far as this one goes, it doesn't feel like there is identifiable smudge, and at least in my
Well, there
my
could
view.
be if someone handled it at some point.
Oh, I understand what you're saying then. Okay,
Yeah,
got
kind
it.
of volatile. Yeah.
And then finally with this one, I do really also enjoy the stripes that you have on the shirt here, which feel like an added pop of color and added interest because all of the other characters here. I mean, I guess here with the dots as well, but these two parts kind of feel very flat, and so since she's the closest and she has this as well, it works well.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we have this nice one, and this is obviously much larger. And can you tell us a little bit about this guy?
This is 30 by 40 inches.
Okay.
And it's also acrylic wash. But the whole thing is acrylic wash. I didn't use any of the pencil. It's from a previous smaller drawing I did. I'm trying to blow things up. So that's another attempt at it. These are all just practices. I have to just keep hacking away at it, I think. But this is also from a photo that I had.
And is it actually from a time of 2008?
Yes.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
A few things that really stand out for me in this piece, particularly, would be the paper towel rolls. You have that nice little dot of the breaking up of the kind of the like brawny. And then also your use of the wood grain that goes through the shadow and adds that extra layer of detail to all the cabinets. And then finally, you have this very bright light that's in the back, but is able to still place itself in the background rather than the foreground of this tube light that you have over here with these little sparks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for a piece like this, when you're working larger, are you finding yourself you're making new decisions within the moment, or is it mostly kind of all planned out still?
I haven't quite worked that out yet. So this was an image that I used a projector to project onto the canvas.
No way. Okay.
But I don't know if I want to be more spontaneous with. So I wanted to, I guess, show some of my behind the scenes. They look finished, but this is a sketch to me, I guess.
I mean, it's an experimentation. Also, I feel like, or I was reading this as I was talking. Annika's saying, I feel like I can see the color variation and style changes and experiments. So I think that they can read as a sketch. And I feel like as a culture, we sometimes say sketch almost as like a lesser value, but more so kind of sketches are beautiful because they are this manifestation of just like getting it out of your head and trying new things. So I definitely appreciate you sharing us as you're experimenting with new mediums. Kendall's saying giving Arthur but teenager vibes. And then Annika's also calling out the bright colors and the wooden textures being very cool. Also hello to Robert. When you're working with color, especially in something like this, I know this came from a photo, but do you find yourself altering colors and changing the color scheme, or is it mostly taking what you see and replicating it on the canvas?
This was more like the realistic color that existed of these objects, but I'm not sure if I want to use a more limited palette or be more graphic with it. This was taken at night with like a flash, so a lot of things have been flattened out, and I feel like I could have maybe captured that better with some like bolder or more limited color choices. But again, this was just like me trying out. I think it's a little too like jewel palette, but I had a bunch of colors, so I thought I'd use them.
No, I think it works well. It's definitely has its pockets of colors that help balance it. Like you have her shirt is also the inside of this toaster oven, which is also then seen in the calendar. So it definitely puts its way around the canvas. And then also you have this white, which can then also be kind of seen in the highlights here. So it feels very balanced to me. And I like the colors of it. So very cool. Also, Mike is also calling out the wood grain. He also enjoys it.
Oh, thank you.
So then we have this one, which is obviously a little bit more sketchy.
Yeah. There's another example of like the sort of sketchy comic I'll sometimes just do digitally, where I'm not using any straight lines. I'm not going over and doing a sketch. I'm not finishing it. I'm trying to like make myself be a little looser.
Yeah. Is that something that you feel is therapeutic in the sense of like if you're having a hard time, do you sit down and sketch, or is it mostly like when you're kind of already trying to tell a story?
Yeah, sometimes I'll have like a thought in my head that I want to just do like a 5 or 10 panel comic about, and people really like those.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very personal. It's very I think especially if they're sketchy too, you can really find yourself putting yourself in the place of it. And then I think even on top of that, the anthropomorphic vibe also helps people remove the identity from it and place their own identity in those spots.
Yeah, I like that interpretation.
But cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing those with us as well. Obviously, everything does not exist in its own vacuum. We got through all the sketches, right? Those are all sketches.
I think so.
Sketches. Art does not exist in its own vacuum. We also really like to be able to call out the other artists and people that inspire us. So let's do some art talk. So first up, we have Alex Graham, which is an artist that you sent over with this composition. How long have you known about Alex, and why did you pick Alex?
She is also a cartoonist. She serialized a comic that gained a lot of popularity during the pandemic called Dog Biscuits.
Okay.
But she's a painter, and she was we're friendly, and she said something about cartoonists should be painters and vice versa, and that got me a little bit on this kick that I'm on, where I'm trying to do larger work in paint. So all of these, the following images are, I didn't want to pick just one artist. I wanted to pick a variety of artists that I've been interested in recently who are doing what I personally, not them, but I am calling furry fine art.
Okay.
So, yeah, like the anthropomorphic characters, or just a kind of like a surreal sort of cartoon character, but in a more like elevated medium and elevated composition. That's what I'm trying to translate my work into right now. So these are some of my inspirations for that at this moment. So yeah, this is Alex Graham, brilliant cartoonist, brilliant painter. I own a painting of hers. It's here.
Oh, let's see.
I love my couch. You can't really see it, but yeah. It's over here.
I think that also real quick brings up something that bears conversation. And how do you navigate the idea of anthropomorphic and furry kind of conflict? Not conflict in the sense of like you could easily be boxed into the idea of furry art, but I also wouldn't look at like BoJack Horseman and think of furry. It's not something that necessarily happens. How do you kind of navigate that space?
Very carefully.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm working on that right now because my work does call to question like why is everyone an animal, and that's something that you see in comics and you see in cartoons and you don't question it as much, but if you see it in a painting, you might be more like, I don't understand really what I'm looking at. And I want to keep going with that because it feels very real to me. That's just like how I draw. So I want to find a way to translate that into like a higher brow. But like I said, I like working with restrictions and I like existing in like an in-between space. So it can be frustrating sometimes, but it's also like really interesting and feels authentic to me to try to keep working in that space and that style.
Cool. That was a good answer. Next up, we also have another a vibe of anthropomorphism. Also, once again, some painting. Who is this?
This is someone on Twitter who goes by Focus. I don't know their real name. This I think might actually be digital, although I think they work in paint also. But their work is just very strange, like like dreamlike. Like I guess this is a character eating a piece of spaghetti from a spaghetti pot, but it's just like the composition is so strange, and the reflection on the pot, and why are we looking at this character eating spaghetti? It's really compelling to me. Their work is like it almost looks like comics sometimes, but not quite. It's very like dreamlike.
Yeah,
Very
the cut of the side definitely gives an idea of a comic and a story that's kind of being told in two spots. But then at the same time, yeah, it feels very removed as well, even from comics, in the sense that it feels like just a full-on composition rather than trying to do sequential.
Yeah.
I also agree. I really like the reflection of the pot as well. It's some of the nitty grittiest as far as is visualized here, but then it's also really interesting to put that next to such a solid flat color that they have over here.
Yeah.
But it's by Focus, you said on Twitter?
Yeah, their handle is like a bunch of numbers, I think. I could maybe I should have. I think they're very mysterious, I think. So the display name is Focus. So maybe if you look that up, you can find them.
And then is that just someone you've kind of like I know you said you were friendly with the previous artist, but then for this one, is this kind of someone you're watching from afar?
Yeah, I don't know them. I don't think they follow me back. But I just really admire their work. So
it's also really crazy too to see like the table doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
But it doesn't read that way until further investigation, because I was just like, oh, that's a table. And then kind of as I'm looking towards it, those back legs would not exist there in any way. But it helps build and let me know that it's a table, which is really interesting. So
yeah.
Also makes me think, like, are they in an office? Like, what this looks like a cubicle, and this looks like some sort of like overhead sort of lighting.
Yeah, you would never be like testing the spaghetti on a table. It would be like on a oven, and or on the stove, and everything is it's like very deliberate. Like the character is wearing an apron that you see from two different angles, so like that's very carefully considered. But the rest is just like you don't know where it is, what this person's doing.
Just the further there's investigation, the more questions there are, more so than more clarity.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I also want to call out is this plate, which is almost invisible. It's just directly the same color as the surface of the table, but you can only see through the shadow, which is just trippy, which I like. But also, Katarina is saying trippy. Also, Sean, good to see you. Welcome to it. We are with Alabaster Pizzo right now. Thank you for tuning in. She's a sequential artist located in the Los Angeles area. Right? You're still in LA?
Yeah.
And what are you doing for work these days, by the way?
I just started working as an art conservation tech.
Yeah. And so what does that kind of do?
Well, the company that I work for works specifically with architecture and sculptures. So a lot of tile, a lot of bronze, cleaning and fixing and patching and repainting, sculptures, public art, murals, fireplaces, classic California tile, stuff like that. I'm really interested in that stuff. I have a little bit of a side project where I make like mosaic stuff out of things I find out and about in the city.
Really?
So I was working in animation, but a lot of people have been out of work for a long time.
Yeah.
In that field. So I decided to find something else to do, and it's really cool. I'm learning a lot.
And so you're also kind of using sequential art maybe on the side as well, to kind of still complete that itch when you're coming home from work and need to explore creatively things that when you're drawing, because I feel like when you're restoring, it probably is still very artistically enriching,
Sometimes.
but but also can also be like, oh, I want to be able to create my own image.
I was working on these pictorial tiles that were about 100 years old, where there was pieces missing from a lot of them. So I had to go in and patch them and paint them in to kind of
Yeah.
look like how they looked. So they left a lot of that to me because they know I can draw.
Is that stressful?
No.
No.
With historic conservation, my boss says better is the enemy of good enough, which I think is a good philosophy to have. You don't want something to look brand new, obviously, because it's supposed to be old. So yeah, that's been fun. And then as far as comics go, I'm still on the hook for all the work. Like I have to get a book done next year, so I do have to like come home and sit down and work on that as well, or do that on the weekend, or so.
Well, we're glad that you do, because you have some really cool stuff. I know Katarina is asking, where do you find inspiration for your concepts?
Well, I love doing stuff from people's photos, my own photos. I love when people send me like pictures they've had like on Facebook for like a long time, like just candid photos of people hanging out. I love that. My own work, I do a lot of autobio stuff, but also characters existing in cities, walking around. That's an inspiration to me. I'm a very urban person. Architecture.
As is LA, I feel like that kind of speaks to itself.
Yeah, well, the urbanism here is interesting because it's not a very urban city, but I've found a way to. I live in Koreatown, close to downtown, so I live in like a pretty old, dense part of the city. But yeah, I get around on foot and on the bus, so I live I have like a slightly different experience of LA than I think a lot of people do.
I mean, it's great because then then it also can be reflected in your work of kind of walking around the city in its own way. It's just a little bit different than New York, obviously.
A little bit.
But I don't mean to detract us too much from also looking at other artists you like. You did send over Mark Zubrovic, and he's got this beautiful and kind of like I don't know, let's say kind of like Greek god vibe going on here, because we've got some grapes.
I think this is like a call back to an actual work. I can't remember exactly what it is, but like a classical depiction of these satyrs, I think. And here they are drawn as dog deities instead. And I think this might be oil on linen. So
oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, something I've definitely.
The whole linen or velvet's always kind of like a whole nother field to work with, especially I know because you said you're working on like wood and canvas. Having it on some sort of linen like that would be like a whole nother set of not issues but variables to then take in. And similar to the other one that we were looking at with the spaghetti, it's interesting to see that we have a main composition, we have a main focus, but then once again, if you kind of look over their shoulder, you can see that there's more to be seen with the piece, which is nice. How would you look at this and say that you would want to reflect techniques or choices in your own work from looking at something like this?
I think the like elevated medium of like very traditional art supplies that I haven't used, like oil and linen. Like I'm so used to using pencil on paper, and I don't have a lot of classic training in mediums like that. And I love that like it's such like a lowbrow image with highbrow materials taken from like a classic like a neoclassical kind of. So yeah,
I mean both of those things, both in composition and materials, and even to your point, stories. It's this constant, old and new brought together, which is really cool. Reverb Mike saying many of the great old masters painted on linen, which is very true. So it comes full circle. And then we have one more, it looks like, which is Paul Pang. And Paul Pang is definitely the most sequential out of any of these that we've looked at so far.
Yeah. But again, also, like, it seems like it might be a scene from a comic, but you don't have more context. You don't know what's going on. The more you look at it, the less you understand it.
Yeah.
I
Especially these
like
big
that.
claws.
Yeah.
And the more that you kind of realize that there's this really focus on strong graphite, I would assume is graphite, right?
Yeah, I think it's graphite, and then also like maybe white pencil in there too. A lot of his work also is a little bit like disturbing, like violent, or a little bit. I picked like a kind of a PG image, but some of it is it's always these creatures, these like creatures with the horns, and sometimes they have human bodies and sometimes animal bodies, and yeah, it's very cool. I'm not sure the size. I think it might be much larger than a page. I think it's like a full sheet of paper.
Yeah, it's cool. Do you ever use anything with white pencil when you're working on your own stuff?
No, I haven't. But that might be a good exercise for me, like working with a medium tone substrate and then going dark and light. I feel like we did that a lot in school, but it's been a long time since I've been in school, so I haven't done that in a minute.
It certainly always helped me, especially with the use of like life drawing and just toning your canvas first. I was always a lot better with charcoal once I was able to bring it up with highlights or down with shadows rather than starting with a white canvas and just going into shadows. It was always a nice exercise, but it's just cool to see the textures here. It's cool to see different choices. Is this a art style that you would also kind of want to see in your own work as well?
Yeah, the pencil certainly, is something that I use. I bought a big roll of paper last weekend that I think I want to do some big drawings, like how I draw, except just huge. So yeah, I'm experimenting with scale and with mediums, and yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your different inspirations for us. It's always really cool to see. We are, like I said, we are products of the things around us. So it's always nice to have that connection with artists outside of yourself. While we were talking, I saw that Katerina said, "I love the Monstera" in the background.
Oh, thank you.
Which is such a. Now, I did not pay her to say that. That is a very natural progression into our next piece, which is "Let me look at your collection" for us. And when you are kind of taking care of this garden that you have, do you feel like this contributes to your life as an artist, or do you think that it's like a meditative thing that takes you away from it? What brought you to share your plants?
I have a lot of them. That's why I thought it might be good for this section. And I think definitely the latter. It's like a meditative thing that I could take a break and prune, and I do a lot of propagating. So most of the plants I have. Yes, well, it gets easier if you do it a lot. There's a lot of plants outside here in LA, so most of what I have are just things that I've chopped off of existing plants outside and then have grown inside.
Yeah.
So that's just like it's a very tactile, very like offline thing that I like to do. And I'll occasionally sell them sometimes too. And I made that green pot.
Well, Katerina is actually already commenting about the pot. She's just like navigating these vocal transitions the best here. Thank you so much for being here, Katerina. So you made this pot though. So was that a ceramic situation? What is that made out of?
It's concrete.
Oh, really?
And then the little brown bits are pieces of brick that were washed up on the shore of the East River in Williamsburg.
Oh, no way. Okay.
And then it's stuck on there with like colored grout.
So you moved out though to LA in 2017, right?
18, yeah.
2018. So have you had this one since then?
No, I'm back and forth a lot because I'm from New York, and I spent a lot of time there during the pandemic. I went home because I was able to work from home. So I do a lot of apartment swapping with
Yeah.
people in New York. So I could go home and see my family and, be in New York. So
But this is really cool because this also is kind of a reference and allusion to what you're talking about earlier when you're talking about how you're collecting things in the world and bringing them back. You're also talking about how you're restoring things and bringing life to things that maybe are falling apart. And it's cool that even indirectly you have this relationship with collecting the world and repurposing it into new creations and having it as a pot that, then you have your cacti in, which is nice.
Yeah, I'm very into recycling. I've also been teaching myself how to DIY recycle plastic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Any sort of types in particular, or mostly just like
HDPE and LDPE, which is what a lot of like food containers or detergent bottles are made out of, and you can melt that down at the temperature of an iron, which is what I do, and I make them into. It's just been like a little experiment that I've.
Really, what have you been making with those?
I was making refrigerator magnets.
No way, really?
I'll show you because my fridge is right here.
See, this is gonna be something that I'm gonna try to do, and Aaron's gonna be so mad at me.
These are it's plastic from detergent bottles that have been melted down and put into a copper plumbing cap. Wow. And the magnets are embedded in the back, so there's no glue or anything involved. It's like all recycled material except for the metal.
And so what are the little spots on it as well? Are those just the dyes that were in there already?
Well, I cut up other pieces.
Oh, and you just like melt them into it?
Yeah, I melted into I have like the plumbing cap is like on top of a hot plate. So that's and then I put it in there, and then you have to force it together. So I have like a wooden dowel that I force into the top of the cap with a C-clamp, and then when it cools down, it comes out like this.
Wow, that's so cool. I guess I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that. And where'd you learn that through? Was that just something you saw online and you kind of then?
Yeah, I kind of just was experimenting. There's a few like kind of underground grassroots organizations that do like DIY plastic recycling. The biggest one is called Precious Plastic, and they're based in a lot of places. They will send you like plans to CNC route like a plastic ejection mold for free. So you could like set up a shop where you collect plastic from the community and turn it into, I don't know, cutting boards or whatever.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have so many side projects. There's so many things I want to do.
But that's what that's what like honestly this show is so much about, is like obviously I found your work through a recommendation of Alex Crocus, which we interviewed over I think one of our last takeovers. But it's immediately one of the things where it's like I was drawn towards your work. I was interested as your work like as an artist, but then it's just always this Pandora box of like, normally if you find someone whose art you create, you also genuinely like all the facets that they have outside of their life, because it kind of is a reflection of who they are. So it's really cool to see. You did send over a few other shots of your plant life. And for this one, it's a corn plant, right?
That's a Dracena.
Okay, so that's different from this guy, though, right?
Oh, you have one?
I think it's different from this, though, right?
Oh no, that is he's
not doing as hot, but it's okay.
Common names sometimes, but yeah, that's looking good. And you can see in the corner here another one of my pots with.
Is that what's up here? This guy?
Yeah, like
is this also concrete?
Yeah, that's concrete with like random pieces of tile, pieces of granite I found in a dumpster, scrap glass. Anything I walk around a lot, and there's a lot of garbage on the ground in LA, so I find a lot of stuff.
Also, this is really cute. Whatever is down here.
Yeah, that's just a pot that I got. Some art. And
sorry, with a little guy in a little tire swing.
And my piggy bank, my cat piggy bank.
Also, yeah, the cat piggy bank. Who could resist? But then you also you said you found the spot.
Yeah, that's just from like Home Depot.
Oh, nice. Next up, we have this whole forest of a corner, but I'm also very interested again now in this pot down here.
Yeah.
Is this another one you made?
Right here. Yeah. So this is
look
all
at him. He's so cute.
This is all pieces of plastic I picked up on the beach at Rockaway Beach.
Oh wow. Okay. So yeah, you got a lot of New York in your LA apartment.
Yeah, I tried. And then this is a plant that was outside my friend's house in Miami that I took a piece of and came home with and was able to propagate. So.
You brought a propagated plant on an airplane on the way back from Miami.
Yeah, all you need, you could just kind of wrap it in a napkin. As long as you could like stick it in water later, everything will grow back. That's
remarkable. I'm also interested in these guys that you have on the walls here. These little fish and this little guy.
Talk about that. That's paper mache. I make a recycled paper mache clay out of egg cartons that I soak in water and then put in a blender.
Like what is going on? Like I just point to random things in your apartment. You're like, oh yes, no, and I sewed that back from linen of this. It's like okay. So wait, there were egg cartons like of what you would get, just the regular eggs, and so you ripped them up and turned them into paper mache and then turned them into these fish.
Yeah, it air dries into like a pretty solid like paper clay, and then you could paint it. So that
this is just like a chain that you had that it would be like
I just pushed pieces of wire into them as they were drying, and then I linked them together once they were dry so that they could hang.
Oh man. Oh, they're beautiful. And then this guy over here, is that also paper mache?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's just like when it
dries, you can sand it.
You sand it down?
Yeah.
Oh, so it feels like it's like less of a volcano from middle school and more like a fine art piece.
Yes. Yeah.
They're cool. Beautiful. I'm really stoked about these. These are so neat. But then also I don't want to take away from your awesome green thumb, which you have here. Is this one of your, this is my favorite, I feel like, out of your collection.
Yeah, that guy is unwieldy.
And you've had him for a while?
Yeah, about 5 years, I think.
Oh, cool. Not bad. Yeah. And then got this guy over here. Once again, is another Home Depot pot?
No, this is a pot that I came into possession of some abandoned ceramics that a friend of mine found in a basement, and I got yeah.
Sorry, I'm having a wonderful time with you right now. It's just like everything is just another little surprise.
I can't. It's almost I can't say no to like cool garbage.
Yeah,
it's like kind of a problem sometimes, but sometimes I really need it. So she gave me a bunch of these vessels, and I have a special drill bit that will drill through tile or stoneware, so I could add a hole.
Okay.
To it, and then
And that doesn't break it. Doesn't make it.
No, it's like a diamond bit. It's like kind of a hollow drill bit with diamonds in it. So you use some water and you just drill down into it, and it just pops a little hole out.
And where'd you learn that through?
Just went to Home Depot to see if they had something like, I don't know. Sometimes I just have an idea and I'll Google like, can I do this? And someone's got a YouTube video of it somewhere. So
I mean, YouTube is the new college degree, honestly.
Yeah, YouTube and between YouTube and Reddit, you could teach yourself how to build a house.
Yeah, no joke. Literally, yeah. And then the last one you have shared over here, we have these guys. And once again, two very cool pots. This kind of looks like a relief of some sort of plant into the side of this.
That was another just abandoned piece that I got from my friend that I thought was really cool. And then the one next to it is another one that I made. That's mussel shells inlaid into the concrete.
Oh, cool.
And pieces of brick, I think.
But it's interesting that you took the mussel shell and you flipped it so that you have the hollow piece on the outside, which is cool to create these little divots into it.
Yeah, and it's like iridescent kind of. So some of them I filled, so you could see some of them were filled with a mortar.
Like this right here.
Yeah, and then some of them I left empty. So, and those are two propagations of mine. I'm really proud of the one on the left.
This guy?
Yeah, he's growing a little crooked, but
probably towards the light or something.
Yeah, you can't always guess what they're gonna do.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing these with you. It's always cool to see collections. And it was also cool as a means to see kind of the things that you collect and then create out of the world around you.
We have a side project the handle on Instagram is Alabaster's House.
Okay.
And that's where I post all of that stuff.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll be sure to throw that in the chat for people as well. You said it's Alabaster's House.
Yeah, there's
an S in it. Alabasters or Alabaster House.
Alabaster's S and then underscore house.
Underscore house. Okay.
Very cool. Now I don't even remember. Yes, it is. Sure we'll find it. The underscore. Yeah.
We are a little bit over an hour or so into it, so time's flying by. We've got about like 15 minutes left. But we do like to do this little monkey paws segment, which is a fun segment where we get to take care of our personal health. So monkey paws, I learned it through Anna Davis Court, which is another illustrator live streamer on Behance. And it's just a simple exercise that you can do to make sure you're taking care of your hands so that we don't mess up and get carpal tunnel. Would you like to take a drink break, or do you want to do monkey paws with us?
I'm good to go.
You're good to go. All right, cool. So it's very simple. And it's also the ones with like this like freak me out. I don't like that. So I actually enjoy this experience. And so what you do is you reach out in front of you like this, your hands out, and you bring them in. And then
really extended, yeah.
Yeah, fully extended. You know, got this guy. And then you release, and then you put your hands down next for next one. You can start to feel it too. If it hurts at any point, not a medical professional. I normally feel them like right here and here. So then the next thing that we do is you're gonna flip it over to like hands out like this guy. Bring them in, and then shake. And then this one's always the hardest for me. And then you point towards yourself. So as you want to come up like this.
Oh, okay.
Like that, and then you bring them in, like that. Yeah, there they are. I say enough of that one. So then you shake it up. Tend to do these more or less 2 or 3 times just to go through all of them. But they're really helpful, especially when I do a full week of offset and I'm doing this twice a day. By the end of the week, I always am feeling way better about my wrists than any other time that I'm doing it. But it's just a good reminder, take care of your bodies. We do like little neck stretches or what have you, shoulders as well. I know people like to also call out the 20-20 rule, where you every 20 minutes you look at something 20 feet away. I'm not sure if there's any science behind that, but people like it. So there you go. Now you know your monkey paws. Now we are getting close to our cutoff time, but we also have another segment that I love to do that really shows the growth of an artist and how things are moving along from where you used to be to where you are now. So let's do from this to that.
From this to that.
Man, that is so loud. I really need to mess with that. That one is like screaming at you. Sorry about that. But you were kind enough to send over the Support Your Local Farmers Market. And when is this from?
This is from 2009.
Nice. Really? Wow.
We tell from the way that the characters are dressed.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And
that's so funny.
the chrome bag on the fixed gear bicycle. And I did this in college.
So was this for a college piece of work, or was this actually just for
it was a homework assignment?
Yeah. And this is all physical again, or is this digital?
It's ink and some kind of marker. I forget what kind of marker. Maybe Pantone or something like that. Or Prisma. Ooh,
and then with this, what do you feel like is still present in your work?
The animal characters, certainly.
For sure.
I love drawing city backgrounds. That's my favorite thing. I still love that.
Yeah, I love the color of the city in the background and how it's not really present in anything in the foreground. It's also really interesting to see that you have these two, I guess, well, three, because I guess there's technically this one. But it's interesting that it feels almost like a street, but then it's also turned on its side because then you have this line of buildings on the bottom as well, to kind of then make it more of an abstract rather than a physical thing. What do you feel like is no longer a piece of your work that is present in this one?
I don't use ink that much anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess the way that I draw, maybe eyes and heads have changed a little bit. But honestly, the reason I picked this is it's kind of surprising how old it is and how similar some of my like aesthetics are.
And it still holds up. Like it's still a very it's still a very quality piece. Like I wouldn't look at this and be like, oh God, like this isn't worth my time. Like it's over like 14 or 15 years old.
Yeah,
which makes us feel old.
Time capsule of like what I thought was super cool in 2000.
One thing that I also find interesting about these ones is your dedication to some of the details that you have in darker areas, which I feel like now you would either use a different color underneath of it and then use line work on top of, or you would just commit to the full on like blackness of it.
Yeah.
But between the backpack with the stitches, the creases in the shorts here, and then even the outlining of the leaves here with this white are all very interesting. I think that both the style you have now is cool, but I also really like kind of what you had going here with these like small details. Also, these pants are cool. I like the little hatching. You don't really do hatching anymore.
Yeah, I don't. I used to, and now I really try to stay away from it.
So why is that? Why do you feel like you no longer have a draw towards any sort of hatch?
It might just be like I feel like I have to pick a lane, and I like to work within restrictions. So it just became a rule that I don't do any like value shading. So that informs a lot of how I structure an image now because I can't rely on that.
Right.
So
constraints help kind of create some of the best work sometimes. By the way, someone who surprisingly doesn't have a username says, I really like those city profiles, which I agree. I think that these reflections in the windows are beautiful. I love how they're like a single stroke of a curve. And then still present in your work today, which, by the way, if you're just joining now, this is an old piece of Alabasters. The polka dots that you have present in the trees here are really cool and something that you still see in your work, but add a nice form of texture to everything. So cool. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. So is there any advice or tips that you would give to your previous self, or like advice that you just would like to tell 2009 Alabaster?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't have to. I just wasn't sure if when you look at that, it like awakens anything, like never grab it again.
You just have to learn as you go. There's nothing you could substitute for just 15 years of life on Earth.
No, I get that. But oh wait, Sean says you should have a name. I just make sure I didn't miss anything in chat. But we have one last segment outside of that, which is a very short segment that we have that's just all about burnout. So obviously, as artists, you often from time to time run into a situation where you are feeling depleted when it comes to being like you can't draw in a day, or you just can't find the inspiration to draw. What do you do whenever you're feeling like you're in a funk and you want to reignite kind of that artistic vision for you?
That's tough because a lot of the burnout that I experience, I can't help. I have to work almost full time on top of my other full-time job of my artwork.
Right.
And yeah, taking a break for an hour to tend to my plants can only really help that so much. And
Right.
yeah, I find that when the times that I'm trying to just work for myself and not have a constant paycheck, I get quickly overwhelmed by the amount of work that I have to do. So, but then when I'm working for someone else, I lament that I don't have the time to do my own work. So,
Oh yeah, it's never the perfect scenario because it's always like grass is always green on the other side. But I can definitely sympathize with that. I know you said you're working on a book for next year.
mhm.
How do you kind of time and schedule yourself out for something like that? Is it something where you have to give yourself deadlines throughout the year, or does the publisher give you deadlines throughout the year? Um, how do you make sure it gets done by the time they need it done?
That really depends on like what else is going on in my life. And
Okay.
throughout my entire 20s, I worked very infrequently, so I had a lot of time to do all the rest of my work. But I lived in a very cheap apartment back then, and I don't anymore. The world has changed very rapidly, and I just I actually don't know how I'm going to balance my time over the next year. I work almost every day.
Yeah.
Well, like 9 to 5 during the week. And I don't have a lot of energy left over afterwards. And I have not yet found a way to balance that. I have to, but
Right.
my job is very physical, so I'm like out in the sun all day sometimes scrubbing a fountain, and then I have to come home and make dinner, and then I don't have a lot of energy after that, but I just have to.
No, it's important to still be kind to yourself though too, just because yeah, if you're doing hard work throughout the day, like if you come home and see art is so personal that if you are exhausted or you're tired, a lot of times that then is reflected in the work that you're doing, and then you don't like the work as much. So
Yeah.
that's always really tough. But I know we talked a little bit about the idea of writing a script for your last book.
Mhm.
Would the writing kind of come in first place for making progress towards completing this book? Or do you feel like you'll mostly kind of just start with drawing and then see how things kind of progress from there?
I start with an outline, so it's not exactly like a script the way that like a TV script would look like, and then I flesh that out as I go along. But I typically will sketch and then finish each page one by one. I don't do like a lot of penciling and then go back and edit. Like I don't know, that's just how I work. So, but like I said, things take sometimes their own course, or I change the dialogue a little bit as it goes. It just sort of it's
Now,
organic.
working in animation, obviously, I feel like that kind of is diverges itself very much from the idea of like you have to do a lot of planning for animation, right? So, is it
Yeah.
kind of like a relief in that sense so that you don't have to have those constraints?
Yeah, and that working within the animation pipeline was interesting, and helpful, I think, to my process as a cartoonist of like the steps in which things are done and how you get a lot of people to work on something, and also things like reusing backgrounds,
Mhm.
which is something that is done in TV a lot because it's cheaper, but also it kind of I think helps the viewer establish themselves back in a space.
Yeah,
And I never used to do that in comics. I was like drawing a new background or like putting the characters in like a different part of a scene.
yeah,
Like I don't have to do that. I could just keep drawing them in the same like shot of the living room, and it's so much easier.
but yeah, like to your point, it gives the context of a familiar space.
Mhm.
Um, Now, how do you keep yourself from getting bored with a space while you're drawing a same space again?
Well, I try to be very graphic. If I do like a big establishing shot of a big ballroom or something, then every shot doesn't have all of that in it, and I'll
Right.
just do like the arched windows or something in the background as a solid shape. So that can
Going
make
back to that shapes idea, just kind of like what you're talking about with forms, but shapes and the idea of also environments and spaces.
Mhm.
So cool. Well, that is about an hour and a half for us.
Mhm.
Obviously, we have a lot to look forward to from you. Obviously, check out Alabaster Pizzo on Instagram and on Twitter as well. You have your book that you said you're going to be working on for next year. Is there anything else that you would like to plug or speak to before we say goodbye?
No, I think that's it.
No, that's
Like
fantastic.
I said, I work on a lot of. I have my hand in a lot of pots, so it could be sometimes tough for me to like get it all out at once.
Yeah. Do you? Speaking of literal pots, do you sell any of your ceramics or anything?
I do, yeah. They're a little bit heavy, so shipping can be $20 to $30 depending on where you are. But that's all on my other Instagram, Alabaster.
That's under the Alabaster's house.
Yeah, and they're concrete. They're not ceramic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just say ceramic is like as if that's not the material. I just like put that in a bucket of the idea of what like a pot is,
Yeah,
which is absolutely inaccurate.
Well, I didn't want it's expensive to like rent a kiln, so I wanted to use
Yeah.
something that wasn't.
No, I mean it's also cool. It's like to your point of sustainability and the idea of like finding beauty in other materials. It's really cool to see that you're then able to then integrate different shells or pieces that you have into the works that you create. So it's neat. I mean, I like it.
Thank you.
But thank you again so much for coming on. We look forward to seeing your work. Make sure everyone give you a follow, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you. This was super fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you again. Bye. All right, guys. So yeah, that's going to be it for episode 1. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. And I'm excited to bring James on. Stay tuned here for more Adobe Live. And thank you again to Alabaster for hanging out with us. And I will see you guys all in just a moment. Thank you very much for everyone that tuned in and said hello and commented in the chat. It was good to have you. And thanks, of course, #1 star to Annika Agarwal for moderating. Appreciate you. All right. I'll see you guys all real soon. Yeah, that was about an hour and a half.